Hey there, good afternoon. Welcome back to my little gardening show. This afternoon I thought I'd give you an update on my worm bin, let you take a peek at the worms, the food that I have prepared for them today, and just talk a little bit about worm castings. So let's take a look at the worms first. So here's the bin, and so far I've been pretty impressed with this. No odors, no problems, haven't had worms trying to escape. Again, there's the food list of what's acceptable for them. Well, let's take a peek. Again, worms are sensitive to light. I started out with probably 200 worms. But you peel it back and there's just worms just camped out all over the place. Now, I did things a little differently than what the directions call for. You know, they say to put the food in clumps in the corners. What I did instead is I just made a paste. And I, you know, like with this bedding here, I'm going to apply the paste over the entire area and then add a fresh layer of newspaper scraps mixed in with some sphagnum moss. I've got some I don't know if you can see that, crushed up eggshells and some mineral powder. And basically what these things are going to do, it's going to provide the grit that is necessary for the worms to be able to digest, you know, or work the material, this paste that I'm going to be putting in there. And we pull back every corner and it's just filled with worms, and the black stuff there is the castings. You know that they're still working this bed over, and there's still plenty of space left in this tray. But anyway, the plan is I'm going to probably do another 2 to 3 rounds of feeding in here until this tray is pretty well full. And the key too is to keep it moist. So I've got my water here. You know, after I apply the paste, you know, with some grit here, my calcium, my eggshells, mineral rock dust, some sphagnum moss. With the new bedding, I'll also wet it down pretty good so it's damp, because the worms like things to be damp. We're basically trying to simulate, you know, the best we can, the conditions that would be in the soil. So why are we going to all this trouble? Well, basically the worm castings are like nature's fertilizer, or one of nature's fertilizer. It's the best fertilizer, you know, from what I've read. Completely natural, doesn't burn the plants at all, so you can add as much of it as you want. It's not going to hurt the plant roots, unlike animal manures that you would use, that you kind of have to let compost, you know, for a little bit. They are also, I think it's like 5 to 11 times richer in the major elements for plant growth, you know, nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, manganese, calcium, and then a whole host of other trace minerals, 5 to 11 times greater than regular like potting soil. The castings too, what makes them special is that they're actually kind of alive. There's they've been coated in a special oil that apparently when the worms are eating through things and the food is going through the worm, They pass through the, I think it's called the alimentary canal, and there's a special oil that's kind of deposited on those castings along with beneficial bacteria, that are breaking things down, but are actually deposited on the castings, so that when the castings are excreted, this oil coats them along with this beneficial bacteria that then acts as kind of a slow release fertilizer. It takes about 2 months for that to break down. So it's not only readily available for the plants, like in a real accessible form for plant roots where they can take it right away, but it's also a slow release where it, over the course of a couple months, it will slowly break down. But at the same time, the beneficial microbes or bacteria that's been deposited, on the castings as well through the digestive process of the worms, continues that action in the soil. So it builds the soil, adds, they call it, I guess, humus, beneficial humus that also helps draw out bad bacteria or fungi. So it kind of purifies the soil a little bit, but also assists the plant roots. There's a symbiotic relationship with the bacteria that's in these castings, and on these castings there's a symbiotic relationship that's formed between the bacteria and the plant roots that help the plants actually draw up more nutrients from the soil and access things in the soil that otherwise they wouldn't be able to access. So there's a lot of neat properties involved with that, and so pretty neat. And the best part is that, once you get it set up, whether you make your own bin or buy a bin or whatnot, it's pretty low maintenance. I'm so far feeding them about every 3 weeks, and putting down this paste here. This is about 48 ounces of paste, which is basically the food scraps and coffee grounds and various things that we collect. I've got them in a little Rubbermaid container. Then I put it in the Vitamix and blend it all together. And I'm doing that because the more processed this stuff is, the easier it's going to be for these guys to digest it, and the faster I'm going to get castings. At least that's the hope. So we'll go ahead and apply our mixture, our paste. It doesn't look that good. It doesn't really smell that bad. There's a lemon that's in with this too. Now in the beginning, I guess first 2 feedings, I didn't put a whole pitcher down. Probably been too much. And really, again, you don't have to feed them that often. You want to actually wait until they've got most of what you put in the last time broken down pretty well. And we'll add some grit. I really need to get a tripod so I don't have to do things with one hand or get somebody to help me. It doesn't take a whole lot. Now one thing, again, putting down as much food as I did in this tray, you might be thinking, well, isn't that going to stink up or attract flies or whatnot? The answer is no, because 2 things. One, it's like 55 degrees in this basement consistently, and it's got about a 5 degree fluctuation between the seasons, but by and large we're far enough underground, about 8 foot, that it's pretty much that temperature, so that helps me. The other thing that helps is that the newspaper, all the carbon basically in this paper acts as kind of a filter for the smell, so I really don't get much, but we're just basically layering, creating layers. Which will then be the bedding for the worms. And about one, I live in a relatively small town, so the newspaper isn't that thick, but basically one paper generated all of this bedding. So we're just going to put a nice layer of bedding on top of here. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to spritz this, just add a little bit of water. To keep things nice and damp. And that's pretty much it. And once a week I come down and check these, just because it's kind of fun to check on them, but I'll check on it, and if I find that it's a little dry, because I've got a fan that's circulating air down here in the basement, I'll go ahead and spritz this again just to keep it nice and moist. But again, not had any problems with this worm bin. And again, a lot of it's just following the instructions as far as the items you put in here. And so the pH is right, or seems to be right, because they're seem to be happy, multiplying like crazy. They're not trying to escape the bin, and they're creating lots of castings. Now I'm hoping in another, maybe in another month or two, to start another tray, where once this tray is pretty well full, which we're getting there, and there's lots of black stuff in there, lots of castings, instead of adding more food and bedding to this tray, I'll go ahead and create a new tray, filling this with a layer of bedding first, wetting it down a little bit. Just a little bit, not much, but some bedding, and then food on top of that to draw the worms up into the next tray. And then once we're fairly confident that the majority of the worms are in this tray, as we continue to add food to just that tray alone, I'll take the bottom tray out then, cycle this tray out, harvest the castings, and then we'll have another tray to use. But I mean, it's going to take a while to get this to full capacity, I think. It's a 5-tray system, so plenty of room to grow. So anyway, that's kind of what I'll be doing this winter, along with planning next year's garden and kind of reading up on things and just trying to learn more and more about gardening. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post. Hopefully things are going well for you guys, and I guess that's all for now. Until next time, happy gardening. Bye.